Hi, I'm Lady Novelist, your female horror narrator, and what I'm about to tell you might just scare the hell out of you. Just kidding, it's only slightly horrific, so don't be afraid. Dim the lights, put your headphones on, and make sure you're not home alone, okay? We have 3 stories for tonight. If you're new here, chances are you haven't heard them yet. I have a series about my hometown, Timișoara, in western Romania. It's called Timișoara Horror Stories, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, now's the perfect time. So listen closely to these 3 tales of horror, and come visit sometime. We've got cookies, and ghosts, and more cookies. Have you ever walked through a garden and felt watched? Not by other people, not by birds or hidden cats, but by the garden itself. If you ever visit Timișoara and wander through the splendid roses garden, you might feel it. There's a path toward an end of the park that curves behind a row of hedges. There, tucked in a quiet corner, you'll find a strange bush. The petals are the color of dying fire, orange with golden edges. It doesn't match any known variety. It never wilts, it never loses its leaves, and no matter how often it's trimmed, it grows back. The city calls it a botanical curiosity, a miracle, but my family calls it something else. We call it the Orange Wonder. I am the great-great-granddaughter of Wilhelm, known in the 18th century as Wilhelm the Florist. Some say he was a botanist, others say he was a genius. Some whispered behind closed doors that he made pacts with things best left unnamed. I don't know exactly what to think, but some things were definitely not right. And yet, Wilhelm remains in the collective memory as the best florist in the city of Timișoara. He is a personality and deserves his place in the history of this extraordinary city. One thing I know for sure. Wilhelm was obsessed with roses. His home once stood not very far from the roses garden in the so-called Elisabethstadt. Back then it was fenced, iron-gated, surrounded by ivy-thick walls. He grew roses in every color, crimson, cream, deep violet, even shades that blend into blue or black under moonlight. But one rose outshone them all. He called it the Orange Wonder. No one was allowed near it, not even his wife, not the gardeners, not the priest who came every January to bless the land. It bloomed in a locked corner of the garden, behind wrought iron gates that were overgrown with thorns. Wilhelm cared for it personally, always at dusk. And then there was his son, Arpad. A quiet boy with curious eyes, Arpad adored the garden. He followed his father from bed to bed, learning Latin names, memorizing the scent of soil after rain. But he knew the rules. And the one rule never to break was this: never go near the Orange Wonder, especially not at night. But children are not known for perfect obedience, and curiosity, as you know, can be fatal. It happened in late October. Arpad was 8. The house had gone quiet for the night. The servants slept, the oil lamps were out, and the moon hung swollen and pale behind thin clouds. He crept barefoot across the floor, down the stairs, out through the side door and into the cold breath of the garden. He knew the path. He knew the place. The gate to the forbidden section was unlocked that night. Perhaps his father had forgotten, or perhaps something had left it open. Arpad pushed it gently and stepped through. There, in the moonlight, the Orange Wonder glowed softly, its petals shimmering gold, as though it fed on starlight. But something was wrong. He wasn't alone. There was a woman standing over the flower bed, her back turned. She wore a faded gray dress that trailed in the dirt. Her hair was long and black, hanging limp like vines down her back. In her hand was a copper jug, and she poured water, slowly, methodically, onto the rose. Arpad stepped closer. "Mama?" he whispered. The woman froze. Then, without turning her body, only her head, she looked at him. Arpad would later describe her eyes not as black or empty, but as absent, gone. Hollow sockets ringed in bruised purple flesh. Her lips were cracked, her mouth hung open slightly, and from the corner of her lip something squirmed, a small white worm wriggling out from her jaw like it lived there. He couldn't scream, he couldn't breathe, he only ran. The next morning he woke in his bed with muddy feet and no memory of getting back. He told no one, not even when his father died years later suddenly in the garden. The doctors called it a seizure, but Arpad knew. The Orange Wonder had chosen its next keeper. So Arpad took over the garden. He married, had children, but he never set foot in that part of the land again, not alone. He hired no gardeners. He built a small glass house around the Orange Wonder and locked it with 3 separate keys, one of which he buried beneath a tree. Still the rose bloomed. Still he would hear once a year in October the sound of water being poured at midnight. One night, long after his hair had gone white, he didn't come to breakfast. His wife found his shoes by the iron gate. The lock of the glass house was shattered from the inside. No one ever found his body. They say he was taken, or that he became something else. The land passed to his children, then to theirs. In time it was sold to the city. The house was torn down. The garden opened to the public. But the Orange Wonder could not be removed. After several failed attempts, machine stalled, a man fell ill, and the young botanist disappeared. It was decided not to destroy it, but to move it. And so it was carefully, cautiously transplanted to the Roses Garden, not far from the home of Wilhelm the florist. It took root quickly. They found Wilhelm's notebook near the newly planted rose. The final entry read, "She is still watering it." Even now, if you look closely, you might find it hidden among the neatly labeled roses in the western beds. It has no tag, no name. The gardeners avoid questions. But sometimes at dusk, a warm orange glow flickers through the leaves. The air stills, and if you're quiet, you might hear the soft clink of water in a copper jug. If you ever see a woman with long black hair standing alone among the roses, do not speak to her, do not follow her, and above all, do not look into her eyes, if she has any, because the Orange Wonder never dies. And once it sees you, it never forgets. Thank you for listening. And next time you walk through a beautiful garden, ask yourself, who's really tending the flowers? I was 8 years old the night I saw something that would follow me for the rest of my life. Even now in my 50s, when the wind is sharp and the sky is the color of bruises, I remember. January 1984. Timișoara, Freidorf, the frozen Bega, and the face beneath the ice. We were children of winter. That January had been unusually harsh. Steel skies, breath visible like spirits in the air, and the Bega frozen thick enough to become our kingdom. Hockey on the frozen Bega River was our favorite game. We fashioned sticks from broken broom handles or simple branches and used chunks of wood for pucks. Our laughter echoed through the barren willow trees across the frozen canal. My name is Alina. Back then, I was a small thing, all scarf and tangled hair, cheeks red from the cold. On Wednesday, January 18th, 1984, we played longer than usual. Dusk had swallowed the world, and the street lamps flickered to life like cold fireflies. I knew I was late getting home. I skated down the center of the Bega, the ice groaning softly beneath my weight. Friedorf's shadowed homes watched from the riverbank. Then, just as I passed under one of the iron footbridges, I saw it. A ripple in the ice. I stopped. Something moved under the surface. No, in the water. The canal, though frozen, had weak spots, and there, through a clouded patch of ice, something thrashed. A swimmer. He rose slowly, his body slicing through the dark water with unnatural grace. His face broke the surface. His eyes locked with mine, jet black, deep wet voids where eyes should be. Long hair floated like river weeds around his head. He said nothing, but in my bones I felt him calling. A silent, terrible summons. I turned and ran. My skates clacked against the concrete as I bolted from the ice and didn't stop until I burst through the gate to our house. I told Mama nothing. What could I say? That the Bega had a ghost? Two days passed. On Friday, January 20th, the cold was bitter enough to numb fear. The memory had dulled, replaced by the pull of play and friendship. We returned to the ice. Near the same bend in the river, just west of the bridge, we played another game. Laughter, shouts, the clatter of sticks. I forgot him, until the ice cracked. It was sudden, a thunderclap beneath my feet. I screamed as the surface shattered, plunging me into the black. The cold was indescribable. It stabbed like knives. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. Water filled my ears, my mouth. I tried to swim, but my coat tangled around me, pulling me down. I hit the underside of the ice. Trapped. I looked up. Shapes moved above. My friends running, fleeing. Then another shape. A figure in the water with me. He came from the depths, bubbles trailing him like whispers. Strong arms wrapped around me. My vision blurred. I blacked out. When I woke, I was on the shore. The sky swam overhead. Sirens howled in the distance. I sat up. A tall figure stood at the edge of the canal. His long hair clung to his shoulders. His chest was bare, skin pale as bone. And those eyes, still black, still bottomless. "Who are you?" I asked. He didn't answer, just turned slowly and walked into the mist. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was gone. I told no one, not my parents, not my friends. What could I say? That a phantom had pulled me from the death? Years passed. Life moved forward. Timișoara changed. The revolution came and went. Friedorf aged with us. I grew up, left home, and became a student at the University of the West. One cold night in the 90s, alone in the library, I browsed the early internet on a clunky terminal. I typed famous swimmers. Don't ask me why. Maybe a ghost had tugged at my sleeve. His face appeared. Johnny Weissmuller, Olympic gold medalist. Hollywood's Tarzan, born in Friedorf, Timișoara, died on January 20th, 1984. My breath caught in my throat. The date, the face, the eyes, I couldn't be sure, but deep inside I knew. The mysterious man had saved me from drowning the day Johnny Weissmuller died. Had it been him, a ghost of the water, the swimmer who never left the Bega? And every year since, on the night of January 20th, I walk to the river's edge. I stare at the ice. I wait. And sometimes when the air is still and the water hasn't frozen yet, I swear I see ripples forming, slow and rhythmic, as though someone is still swimming below, waiting, watching, gliding silently through the canal where he was born, and where something of him, I believe, remains. Timișoara, 1869. In those days, the city stood like a flickering candle caught between progress and something far older. The Austrian Empire brought with it steam engines, Baroque architecture, and nuns from the West. But the swamps, those black-veined marshes girdling the city, did not recede so easily. They whispered at night. They crept beneath doors and into dreams. The place where the statue would stand, where Gheorghe Doja's body was torn apart by fire and iron centuries before, was avoided by locals after sunset. It was said that the dead were not fully dead there. But change came with the pale nun. Her name was Sister Maria Abundanzia, and she arrived from Munich with cold eyes and a wooden statue packed in straw, cradled like an infant. She came not with fanfare, but with footsteps so soft it seemed she glided through the fog. The statue was of the Virgin Mary, carved from Bavarian wood, baby Jesus in her arms, her eyes wide open as if witnessing something terrible. They placed her where the other statue was, not far from where Doja died. Beneath her feet were stones blackened by soot, though the fires had long been extinguished. Within a week, townsfolk claimed that the statue wept at dusk. A trickle of pitch-black sap ran down her cheeks. Others said they heard lullabies when passing by in the dark. The church dismissed it as fevered superstition. But that winter, little Maria Weiss, my great-grandmother, walked home alone, and the statue turned her gaze. It was a cold evening in December. The fog sat thick and low, pressing against the city's bones. 8-year-old Maria had just finished school. Her mother worked as a washerwoman, and her father, absent as ever, was somewhere between the army and the tavern. She always took the shortcut home. It went through the square and right under the shadow of the wooden Mary. That day something compelled her to stop. Perhaps it was the way the light from the setting sun caught the statue's face, or the silence that had fallen like a bell jar over the world. She stood there, gazing into Mary's eyes. They seemed too wide, too knowing. The world shifted. Then came the pain. Like a hot needle plunged into her chest, piercing through ribs and breath and heart. Her legs gave away, her schoolbook scattered into the mud. And then, nothing. Maria awoke in silence, enveloped in golden light. At first she thought she had been swallowed by the sun, but then she saw the women. They stood in a circle around her, tall, pale, and dressed in mourning black. The air smelled of myrrh and moss. One of them, closest to the bed, reached forward and touched Maria's face. She smiled gently. Her face was radiant but solemn. Her hands were cool as river stones, and she looked exactly like the wooden statue. "Are you in pain, child?" she asked. "No," whispered Maria. A second woman stepped forward, her grandmother, the one who had died the winter before, coughing blood into white linens. Her eyes were soft now, unburdened by illness. "We were waiting for you, dear," she said, brushing Maria's hair. "Where am I?" "You are between. The door was open, and you almost walked through." The women nodded. Their mouths never moved. "Do you want to go home?" they asked all at once, their voices like wind through reeds. Maria blinked. "Yes," she said. "Mama will be sad." The pale lady smiled again. "Then sleep, Maria Weiss, and remember us." Maria awoke to wailing. She opened her eyes and saw her mother collapsed at the foot of her bed, clad in black, face buried in her arms. Around her stood half the neighborhood, dressed in mourning. Candles burned low. The windows had been shrouded in cloth. Her body had been washed. The priest had been summoned for the final rites. Maria sat up. Screams echoed through the room. They said it was a miracle. The church was hesitant at first until it became clear that the story would spread with or without them. The city buzzed with whispers of resurrection. She came back from the dead, some said. An angel saved her, others insisted. No, said old Frau Gerlinde, who sold cabbage in the market. She was taken. I saw it. The statue turned its head to follow her. When doctors examined Maria days later, they found swelling behind her eyes and a slow, steady pulse in the back of her neck. A coma, they said, though such words were foreign to most. Back then, a still body was a dead one. No machines to measure the hum of life. No way to know she was still in there. And she would have been buried that very day. It was Sister Abundancia who stopped them. She must rest one more night, the nun had said. Why? No one asked. No one dared. The pale nun's word carried weight heavier than iron. Maria recovered, but she never forgot. Each time she passed by the statue on her way to school, she would stop. She would look into the eyes of the Virgin, and she would whisper, "Thank you." Others noticed too. One night, a drunk man named Zoltan spat at the base of the statue. He was found the next morning in the swamps, face down in muck, his eyes wide with terror and hands clawed into the mud. No wounds, no blood, just fear. They called it coincidence, but Maria knew. Years passed. Maria grew. She married a good man, bore children, told no one of the golden room, the pale lady, the dead grandmother who brushed her hair. Not until she was an old woman herself, skin like parchment, eyes dim but fierce. That was when she told her granddaughter, my grandmother, who passed it down to me. She told her that the statue was not simply a gift. It was a vessel, a boundary. She brought something with her, she said of the nun. Or perhaps she came to seal something away. My grandmother once asked what she saw in the light. The old Maria paused and said, "Something that watches. It watches from beneath the swamps." In 1989, during the revolution, the square around the statue was filled with protesters. Bullets tore through the air. But something strange happened. One man, blinded by shrapnel, crawled at the base of the statue and saw again the next day. A small girl, no older than Maria had been, fell on the ground after an explosion. Her heart stopped. Then, minutes later, she awoke, whispering, "Mama." History repeats. The statue still stands. No, it's not the original wooden one from 1869. It's a marble one. You can visit it. You can look into those eyes, and if you linger too long, you may feel something stir beneath your ribs. A faint pinprick, like a memory of pain. We do not pray to her, not directly, but we stop, we nod, we whisper thanks. For she is not just the mother of sorrows. She is the watcher between. And some doors, once opened, are never quite shut. This is the story passed down from my great-grandmother Maria, and that is why we never cross the square after dark. Not without leaving a flower at the statue's feet, not without whispering thank you, not without remembering.